How's it going, everybody? And welcome to the second edition of the Startup Mac. Mac, the startup guy, that is me, McKeever Edward Conwell II. Everybody calls me Mac. It's a lot simpler. And my co-host,
I'm Kate Alegado.
Kate Alegado.
Indeed.
How's it going today, Kate?
You know, it's a Monday, and when it's a Monday, it's a Monday.
It is a Monday, but in the startup world, you're not allowed to get the case of the Mondays.
I know, but that's why I'm talking to you, and you're going to enlighten me, along with whoever else is watching this video.
Cool. So, at the end of the first video, I told everybody I was going to talk about my first real tech event where I got to meet investors for the first time. So, welcome to story time. This is a startup story that taught me a lot, taught me a whole lot. So, when me and my team first started working on our first idea, which at the time was called NoBadGift.com, we had been working for about 10 months just building this platform, a social gifting platform, and had no clue what we were doing. We were just three developers who were just doing a lot of code every night, and we figured if we created this really cool website, people would love it, people would use it, and that was all there was to it. At some point along the line, we realized there was a lot more to starting a business than just building a site. There was marketing and all these other things. And so we built the site, nobody was using it. And so I started trying to figure out, well, why isn't anybody using this? What are we doing wrong? What else do we need to do? And then I started to learn about investors. And so it hit me. Okay, so as a startup, you build something cool, then you find investors to give you money, and you spend that money on marketing. That's not how it works, but that's what I thought at the time, which goes to show as a startup entrepreneur, especially when you're first startup and just getting out there, there's just a lot of things you don't know. And there's a lot of things that me and my team had to learn the hard way. And this is one of the first hard lessons. So I'm trying to figure out how to find investors, how you meet investors, how you get in front of investors. And I found about an event in D.C. We're a Baltimore-based company, so Washington, D.C. isn't that far from us, about 45 minutes to an hour away. I found out about an event in D.C. You could pay $75 to go, and there would be a few angel investors there. Now, angel investors are different from venture capitalists or VCs. We'll get into that a little bit more in another video. But for the event, they also had another option for you to pay, I think it was like $200 or $250 to pitch. It was like a 2 or 3 minute pitch, and me and my team didn't even know what pitching was, so we weren't going to pay that much money to do that. But you had the option to pay to pitch in front of these investors. So we all get dressed up, and we go down to DC, and we show up at this event, and there's tons of entrepreneurs, from tech to hardware to shelving to health and beauty products. It was just a plethora of entrepreneurs in the room. And the thing was, we were all there for the same thing. Everybody had the same idea in their head that if you paid this money, you show up at this event, and you got a chance to get in front of one of these investors and tell them about your great product, that somebody was going to walk out of there with a check. The completely wrong idea. That is not how investors invest at all. But at the time, like I said, we didn't know. This is our first real event. And so we get to the event, and there's, the networking piece. Everybody's passing out, trading cards. Then there was the pitching part. It was a round-robin pitch. There were about 20 or 25 entrepreneurs in line who just got up to the mic and got 2 or 3 minutes to talk about their product, one after the other, like back to back to back to back to back. And when they were done, these 3 investors started a panel discussion. Well, first off, the 3 investors there weren't really they weren't angel investors. They were venture capitalists. Now, most venture capitalists are, angel investors themselves, but in this case, all 3 of the guys on the panel were pretty much strictly, VCs. And so the difference between an angel investor and a VC, on a quick note, is an angel investor is somebody who invests their own money directly into your company, while a venture capitalist firm is a firm that controls a pool of money by a lot of people and find the right companies or the right investments to make. And so venture capitalists tend to invest at later stages or much further along companies than everybody else in the room was. And so the VC started talking, and They were breaking down investments, how you get in front. They were telling us about investors. They were giving people points on pitching. They were telling us what was important in the space and what were the up and coming trends going on. And this is in 2012. And actually, no, this was in like October 2011. And so everybody in the room is sitting there hanging on to every word, but in the back of everybody's mind is, how can I get your money? How can I get your money? How can I get your money? That's the only thing everybody in this room is thinking is, how can I get you to invest in me? And so finally, there was an entrepreneur in the back of the room who stood up and asked the question, what do I have to do to get one of you three to write me a check today? And everybody in the room was like excited because we were all waiting to hear that anyway. That's what we all showed up for. And this is where the aha moment happened. One of the investors pretty much said into the mic that you coming to meet me here today, or you coming to meet me in person, or coming up to me directly and sending me an email about your company probably isn't going to get you that far with me. What you need to do is find somebody who I know and who I trust to vet you and present you to me. So pretty much you need to get an intro to me. And this is where the whole idea of the intro came in. The fact that you had to find somebody who knew them and who they trusted to tell them about you. And that was the big moment. At that moment, I realized that all the money we had spent, me and my two partners had spent to go to this event, was all a waste. Like the whole event and the whole premise they used to get us there was a bunch of BS, because none of these investors were going to invest in anybody. But that I learned the valuable lesson of to get in front of an investor. In a lot of cases, not the only case, because there's tons of ways you can find an investor and get money and get them to invest in you. But typically, you have to find somebody or build a network where there are people who like your company, who like you, who see your growth, who see what you're doing, who are then willing to introduce you to an investor, or introduce you to a venture capitalist. And that's typically how you get your initial meetings going. And that was the big aha moment from that event. And the next question became, well, how the heck do I meet somebody who knows an investor who's going to like me enough to introduce me to one of them? And that was the next step in the journey.
So how did you even find out about this event?
I found out about the event because I started Googling for like investor events in DC, and I just happened to come across this one. And I signed up for it. I'm still a member to their email server to this day. And those guys do some aggressive marketing. They really try to present it like, if you pay this money and show up to this event, you'll have a chance to meet these investors. And so to a lot of early stage entrepreneurs, you're thinking, if I meet an investor, I can get funding. That's not really how it works. And that's how we thought at the time.
So with the team and with No Bad Give, Turn to Given, did you guys have a mentor and an advisor?
Not at this point.
Not at that point, okay.
This was very early. This was very early in our company. Granted, we had been building for about 10 months, but we didn't know what it was. We didn't know what the term startup was at the time. We were just learning all these things. We were just learning what an investor was or what startup communities were about. So we didn't have an advisor at the time. We didn't even know about having an advisor for your company. We just thought you build really good products and people come. The field of dreams, build it and they will come. That's not how this works.
So what would you advise, a new startup team, or even just a single person that's starting, that's getting into the startup world, or, I wouldn't particularly say just startup, but that's starting their new venture. Do they find kind of like a mentor and an advisor before they start diving into it, or, what's your input on that?
So the big key on all of this was you need to get out and become part of the community and start to build a network. And so me and my team eventually got advisors. That was after we were kind of into the local tech scene here in Baltimore and DC. And we got to know who were the important people in the scene, who were entrepreneurs who may be a step or two ahead of us. And we were able to, reach out to the people who we felt could help us out the best trying to find the right advisors, because not everybody is a good advisor. Not everybody's a good advisor for you and your company. Finding
Yeah.
advisors who are strategic in the fact that they might have expertise in your field, or people you just really respect who have done things before, are really important. So I wouldn't say just go out there and just find an advisor or anybody. Really take your time to get to know who's who and know why you're picking them as an advisor.
Okay. Well, going back to an event that you had attended, was it worth your money? I mean, what would be like a precaution that you would give someone like myself regarding to actually either paying to go into an event or paying to share an idea?
So I would say for us, it was worth the money just in the fact that we learned an important lesson.
Okay.
But for any other entrepreneur who's listening to this, my suggestion or my advice would be, you should never have to pay to pitch. Yes, there might be events where you get to pay to be in front of a large audience or to get a lot of exposure. But as far as getting in front of investors and pitching in front of investors, you should never have to pay for that interaction, or for an investor to take interest in you and to sit down and have that meeting where you get to pitch for them. You should never be paying for that, because by the time you get to the point where an investor is ready to hear your pitch, you've already gone through some kind of vetting process. Like, there's already a genuine interest in you.
Mhm.
So I would say for events like this, where you're just going to go to the event and you're planning to meet a lot of investors and you think you're going to get the pitch and get some funding, that's not really how it works. But if there are specific investors or specific people you do want to get in touch with, who you haven't figured out how to break into that network to get to meet them, I will say it is worth going to some events to meet those individuals. But keep this saying in mind: if you want advice, ask me for money, and if you want my money, ask me for advice. Which means, if you go there to meet these people, don't go there to pitch them, tell them about your company, and tell them you want their money. Because if you do that, they're going to give you a little bit of advice. They might hand you their card, but you're probably not going to hear from them again. But if you
Mhm.
go to one of these events and meet somebody like, hey, I have a question about, if you go to an event and you meet an investor who's particular in e-commerce, maybe somebody who's invested in my company like Zappos. You're like, hey, I really got this. I have this question about, what's new in the emerging in e-commerce. What's the new trends are. I'm thinking about working on this e-commerce platform, but I'm really trying to figure out, in my go-to-market strategy, where are the pitfalls. I'm thinking about using these two different things. I'm not exactly sure.
Mhm.
Coming to them with a detailed question, a question that's within their realm. Well, they might tell you like, hey, here's my email. Email to me. When you email them that question, you have a better chance of getting a response with a real thought out answer, as
Yeah.
opposed to telling them you want their money. And the cool part about, if you get an email where they respond to you and you're just asking a question, you're just asking for advice, you now establish the conversation, and that's something you can continue, so that this investor can get to know you more. They get to see your company grow. They get to see the kind of questions you ask. And that can later down the line lead to, hey, I see your company's growing. I see you gotten to this point. You ready to raise a seed round?
Hmm.
Those are far better conversations than you just walking up to somebody like, hey, I had this great idea. This is what I'm working on. I want you to invest.
So I know with this just one event, and then the process of actually confronting an investor, what are like the best types of events to find these individuals?
The best type of events, conferences, there's certain big conferences out there that you can go to where there'll be a lot of them at, you know, um, in your local tech startup scene, just local tech events, local events for, like, a local demo day or a local pitch competition. There's going to be a lot of important people, a lot of investors. So it's just a matter of getting in that room and networking and knowing who's in the room. Being able to spot that person out and just walking up to them, starting a conversation. It's so much easier to have a conversation with an investor just sitting at a networking event drinking a beer than it is to
Yeah.
write them a cold email or to meet them in their offices. Well, never go into an investor's office. That doesn't work. But having that, being in that kind of social event allows investors to lower some of those barriers that they have because they're so used to people just walking up to them and pitching. So if you're just another guy with a beard, it's like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
so what do you do? And the guy's like, well, I'm an early stage venture capitalist. So they might say, I'm just a startup and entrepreneur enthusiast. And you're like, oh, that's cool. I run a startup and start the conversation. Those tend to go a lot. Those tend to do really well.
So biggest taking point is to not go up to an investor and just pitch your idea.
Yes, do not be the pitching weirdo. Do not see, Michael Arrington or Dave McClure in the room and just run up in front of him and start pitching. Because now you're that crazy weirdo guy who I don't know is telling me all these facts and telling me the story about this company I have no idea or interest in. And just because it may be cool, it may be the next great thing, I'm here in an event and I'm a human being like anybody else. I don't want you just running up to me and asking me a million questions or just start pitching me your idea. Come correct. Don't be the pitching weirdo because they hate that. They hate that.
Well, I know that you're with. I mean, that experience was ungiven in itself, but I know that you're starting a new venture with Redberry. I mean, what's your different strategy that you're doing as compared to Given?
Well, considering this is my second venture, I worked on Given for about 4 years, and over those 4 year period of time, I was able to develop a very well connected network. So this time around, I already had people in my network who I can go to whenever I'm ready to have a conversation with an investor. And I already have advisors of mine who are themselves angel investors. So it's a lot different, the second time around. I already have these people behind me, these people I can reach out to, these people's emails I can reach out to at any given time. A great example of that is I have 3 meetings this week with angel investors who are just advisors of mine. And I'm just meeting with them just to catch up and give them an update on what I'm doing. I'm not going to them to ask them to invest or anything like that. I'm just getting in touch with them to let them know where I am, where my progress is, tell them about the new venture. And to also get them a little excited. These guys, these investors, they're genuinely excited about the startup community. They like to see new companies start. They like to see things happen. They like to see people grow. And so they start to take interest in you. And all 3 guys that I'm meeting with are people I've known for over 2 years now. They followed my journey and they have a genuine interest in my success.
And those are the people that you want. And I guess to never really particularly give up when it comes to startups. I know that, I guess for me, it's one of those things to kind of swallow when you kind of hit that wall. I wouldn't particularly say failure. Sometimes there is, but obstacles.
So to that, being a startup entrepreneur is definitely a lot about perseverance. And the important part to remember is, yes, we didn't make it as far as we thought we would on our first venture. We didn't hit, all the goals and milestones we wanted to hit. But during that time, we learned a lot. So if I gave up and stopped being a startup entrepreneur now, I'd have wasted all the efforts that I had in my first venture. My first venture was pretty much my chance to learn. Like going to college, I spent 4 years and I learned a whole bunch of stuff. So now that I'm doing my second venture, I need to put all that knowledge to good use. If I just quit and stop, building and stop working on new products, well, then all the stuff I learned would go to waste. It's like, what was the point of building that network and getting all these people excited, learning how to reach out to PR companies and marketing companies, how to get, your company talked about in TechCrunch or in VentureBeat, having all that knowledge, has value. And now that I have that knowledge starting out, my second venture will be completely different than the first.
So do you think that that's a lot more attractive for investors, or does that not really give any factor for someone that could be particularly interested in you?
I say that it does play a role for investors. So if you ever listen to Dave McClure talk, one of the founders of 500 Startups and one of their key investors,
Mhm.
He talks about when they accept people in the 500, they typically accept entrepreneurs who have been doing it anywhere from 3 to 7 years already. And he says that because
Mhm.
within the first 3 years, you'd have stumped your toe enough times to know what to do and what not to do.
Yeah.
And by the time you get to 10 years, you probably had enough chances to make it. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think with the knowledge that you obtain, you can keep going. And the longer you persevere, the better chance you have. But I definitely think that, those first 3 to 4 years, you're going to stump your toe and make a lot of mistakes. And when you start your next one, or if you're still working on your same company and you've gotten that far along, you're just better equipped to know what to do next and to move forward.
Oh, I just got inspired.
That's awesome.
That's some good stuff. Definitely needed that on this Monday.
Yeah, the case of the Mondays can bring you down, but we got to keep pushing.
I know. But that was, you got all my questions. I mean, I was just trying to get to that tipping point where I can finally wake up and, yeah, it's extremely, extremely inspirational. Where, especially to the point that, I mean, you are just a startup inspiration or a true example of resiliency and to never really give up. So I needed this, and I hope anyone else who's watching enjoyed this as well as much as I did, because I really needed to wake up on this Monday.
Well, I'm glad, and I hope everybody else out there enjoyed it. That'll conclude my second video blog of this series for the Startup Mac. Please send us your questions. If there's anything you want me to talk about, please let me know. You can email me at mac@redberry, REDBERRR, there's 3 R's, y.com. That's redberry.com. So please reach out to us. If you have anything you want us to talk about, leave it in the comments below, or send me an email, and my information will be in the section below. Have a great Monday, everybody.
Yes, have a good Monday. Thanks again, Smith.
Later,
Really
kid.
appreciate it. See ya.
Bye.